Welcome to the second module of the Knowledge Mobilization Training Series. In this section, we'll be discussing the research evidence to support physical activity planning for increasing physical activity in persons with spinal cord injury. For many of our clients, we often see that despite the best of intentions to engage in healthy lifestyle behaviors, many of them have difficulties translating these good intentions into action. This dilemma is known as the intention-behavior gap within the behavior change literature. A great deal of research has been devoted to examining how people can better translate their intentions into actual behavior. One such strategy is through the use of planning. Across a variety of populations, planning has been found to assist individuals in engaging in many health behaviors, such as healthy eating, reducing smoking, and participating in more physical activity. Planning involves two aspects. The first is that of action planning. As you recall from Module 1, action planning involves forming detailed plans that specify what, where, when, how hard, and how long to engage in a specific behavior. An example of an action plan may be someone planning to go for a wheel on Monday at noon around the block at a moderate to heavy intensity. The second aspect of planning is forming coping plans. This type of planning involves pairing an anticipated barrier with a detailed coping strategy. For example, if one had planned to go for a wheel around their neighborhood, but the weather was bad, then an alternative strategy to ensure that they still fit in their scheduled physical activity is to wheel indoors, such as at the local mall or an indoor track. Essentially, coping plans take the format, if X occurs, then I will do Y. SCI Action Canada researchers have been involved in many studies to test whether forming action plans and coping plans do indeed help individuals with spinal cord injury increase their physical activity. For the remainder of the section, we'll be discussing findings from two of these studies. In the first study, the purpose was to determine whether forming action plans facilitates the translation of intentions into action and increases physical activity behavior among a sample of individuals with spinal cord injury. Participants in this study included 53 sedentary individuals with spinal cord injury, and sedentary being that they engaged in less than 3 days per week of moderate to heavy physical activity. 27 were women, while the remaining 26 were men with a mean age of just about 41 years. Of the 53 individuals who were randomized to the study, 37 were included in the analyses. The goal for all participants was to participate in 3 30-minute bouts of moderate to heavy physical activity per week. For the first condition, which was our experimental condition, these individuals formed action plans. Specifically, they specified a plan of 30 minutes of moderate to heavy physical activity per week over a 4-week period. They were asked to specify where, when, the type of physical activity, the duration, as well as the intensity, so that being of moderate or heavy. In our control group, these individuals did not form any action plans. Rather, they were asked to just list activities that they would enjoy doing over the 4-week period. In terms of the procedure, individuals were screened for eligibility at the beginning of the study. They were then mailed information regarding the study, and 1 week later, baseline assessments had taken place. Specifically, we assessed their physical activity behavior as well as their intentions. And it was this point where the intervention was delivered. Individuals who were randomized to the action planning condition were emailed the action plans they formed with the physical activity counselor, while those who were part of the control group were emailed the list of activities that they had formed with the physical activity counselor. At 4 weeks, the intervention was delivered again. Those who were part of the action planning group formed new action plans with the physical activity counselor over the phone, whereas those who were part of the control group had formed a new list of activities that they would enjoy doing over the next 4 weeks with the physical activity counselor, again over the phone. This information was then emailed to both groups. At 8 weeks, we assessed individuals' behavior as well as their intentions. So what did we find? When we look first at the relationship between intentions and behavior, with our no action planning group or that of our control group, we did not find any relationship between their intentions for engaging physical activity and their actual physical activity behavior, with an R value of 0.02, indicating no relationship. For those who are in action planning group, we found a strong, positive, significant relationship between intentions and behavior, indicating that higher intentions were strongly related to greater physical activity behavior. When we look at the minutes per day of physical activity that the two groups engaged in, you can see that the no action plan group, which is represented by the gray bar, engaged in less minutes per day of physical activity than those who are assigned to the action planning group. In fact, the action planning group engaged in double the number of minutes per day of physical activity in comparison to the no action planning group. The second study that we'll be discussing looked at whether forming action and coping plans helped to promote community-based physical activity in a sample of individuals with spinal cord injury. Similar to the previous study, the goal for all participants was to participate in 3 30-minute bouts of moderate to heavy physical activity per week. There were 2 groups. The first was the action planning group. Individuals randomized to this condition were asked to plan for 3 30-minute bouts of moderate to heavy physical activity per week. Specifically, again, they were supposed to specify where, when, the type of activity, the duration, and the intensity of activity that they planned on engaging in for each week. These activity plans were formed over the phone with a physical activity counselor. Those randomized to the second condition, that of the action and coping planning condition, were also asked to form action plans with the activity counselor over the phone. In addition, they were asked to form coping plans. Specifically, they were asked to think about 3 barriers that may come up over the following period of the study. For each barrier, they were asked to specify a strategy that they would use if this barrier did indeed occur. So for example, if one barrier that was identified was bad weather, then they formed a strategy that they would use in situations where there would be bad weather. In terms of the procedure of the study, individuals were screened for eligibility, and at baseline, they were then assessed for their physical activity behavior. Study information was mailed out to individuals after baseline assessments. At week 1, the intervention was delivered. At this time, we also assessed their physical activity behavior. 5 weeks later, the intervention was delivered once again, where individuals were asked to form new action plans in both conditions, and those who were in the action and coping planning condition were also asked to form coping plans. Behavior was also assessed. And at 10 weeks, the last week of the study, we assessed their physical activity behavior. In terms of the participants for this study, there were 46 individuals with spinal cord injury who were sedentary, and they were randomized to the 2 conditions. 15 were women and 31 were men, with a mean age of almost 50 years. Of those 46 individuals, 44 were included in the analyses. So what did we find? When we looked at the minutes per week of physical activity that the two groups engaged in, you can see there at weeks 5 and week 10, the action and coping planning group, which is represented there by the maroon bar, engaged in more weekly minutes of physical activity than the action planning only. In terms of the size of the effect, we found a moderate to large effect for the action and coping planning group engaging in more minutes per week of physical activity than the action planning only group. So in summary, based on the findings from these two studies, we know with action plans, they help to strengthen the intention-behavior relationship, in that we see those who form action plans have a stronger relationship between their actual intentions and carrying out those intentions into action. And forming action plans also help to promote moderate to heavy physical activity. With the second study, we found that supplementing action plans with coping plans improves behavior more so than forming action plans alone. So what are some implications from this research for your own practice? Well, for clients who we know are motivated, and that is the key, that need to be motivated, it would be useful to get them to start with setting short-term action plans for physical activity. So maybe perhaps getting them to form an action plan for the next week and gradually build over time the number of weeks that they form these action plans. It's also important to sit down with your clients and frequently revisit those action plans. There may be situations where they have formed detailed action plans, but they just simply are having difficulties carrying through with those action plans. In this particular situation, it then would be important to gradually introduce the idea of coping plans, specifically coping plans for personally relevant barriers, so that the client is the one who identifies the barriers, not the healthcare professional. This concludes the first section of Module 2. In the second section, a detailed discussion will be provided on action planning as well as specific examples.